You walked into a room last week, and someone was already talking. Not loudly, not performing, just talking, easy and unhurried, like the air around them had a different temperature than everywhere else. People were leaning in slightly. Nobody was checking their phone. And you stood at the edge of that and felt something you couldn't quite name. Not jealousy exactly, more like recognition. Like watching someone do naturally the thing you've been trying to figure out for years. You told yourself it was charisma, that some people just have it, that it's the kind of thing you're either born with or you spend your whole life pretending you don't want. That's not what it is, and the fact that you've believed that for this long isn't your fault. It's just what happens when nobody ever shows you what's actually happening beneath the surface of those interactions. Here's what most advice gets completely wrong about attractiveness in social situations. It's not about what you project. It's about what you make other people feel about themselves when they're near you. The person in that room wasn't magnetic because of how they looked or how clever their sentences were. They were magnetic because everyone around them felt more interesting, more seen, more like themselves than they usually do in a crowd. That's learnable, every piece of it. The first skill is the one nobody talks about because it sounds too small to matter. You make eye contact when someone is finished talking. Not while they're talking, which is what most people do, scanning their face for when it's their turn. You hold it for one beat after they stop, just one beat longer than feels natural. That pause does something the other person can't explain, but absolutely feels. It says their words landed, that you were actually inside what they said, not queuing up your response while their mouth was still moving. Researcher Ralph Nichols at the University of Minnesota spent decades studying listening behavior and found that most people retain only about 25% of what they hear in conversation because they're spending the other 75% composing their next sentence. One extra beat of eye contact is the physical signal that you were in the other 75%. People don't forget how that feels. They just don't always know why they want to keep talking to you. The second skill stings a little to hear, so stay with it. You've been editing yourself in real time, and it's making you less attractive, not more. Not less attractive physically, less attractive to be around. Every time you swap the honest answer for the safe one, every time you smooth over an opinion because the room might not like it, every time you laugh at something that didn't land for you because everyone else is laughing, you're doing something the other person's nervous system registers without their conscious awareness. They feel the slight pressure of your performance. Not the content of it, just the texture. Something is slightly constructed here. Something is being managed. Psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University researched what he called self-presentation anxiety, the gap between who you are and who you're performing, and found it consistently undermines the very connection it's trying to create. The more energy you spend managing how you're perceived, the less present you are, and presence is the thing they're actually responding to. But I can't just say everything I think. You don't have to. You just have to stop performing the opposite of what you think. There's a version of honesty that isn't brutal. It's just real. And real, in a world full of managed impressions, is almost shockingly attractive. Most advice stops here. What comes next is where it actually changes. The third skill is one you might already have and have never been told is valuable. You notice things, small things, the way someone's energy shifts when a particular subject comes up, the word they use twice that they probably didn't notice using twice, the thing they said quickly, almost in passing, that had more weight in it than the sentences they were clearly more comfortable with. Psychologists call this thin slicing, a term researcher Nalini Ambady developed at Harvard to describe the brain's ability to extract accurate social information from very thin slices of behavior. Some people do this naturally. Quiet people often. People who spent childhood in environments where reading the room wasn't optional. If that's you, you've probably been told you're too observant, too intense, that you make people uncomfortable with how much you notice. Here's the thing nobody said. That skill, aimed with warmth instead of analysis, is one of the most powerful social tools that exists. When you notice the thing someone said quickly and you come back to it gently, you mentioned something earlier. I'm curious about that. You do something almost nobody does. You make them feel like what they almost didn't say was actually the most interesting thing in the room. People spend their whole lives hoping someone will notice what they're almost saying. You already know how to see it. You just haven't been told that was a gift. The fourth skill lives in how you handle silence. Most people can't do this. Silence in a conversation feels like failure to them, something to fill immediately, to paper over with noise before anyone notices it opened up. So they talk, they add, they explain things that didn't need explaining and qualify things that were already clear, and the conversation gets heavier and smaller at the same time. You letting silence exist after something real has been said is a form of respect so rare it feels almost physical. It says, "What you just said was worth sitting in for a moment. It didn't need to be fixed or followed or immediately topped." Research on conversational pacing from the University of Groningen found that the most satisfying conversations, rated afterward by participants, consistently contained more comfortable silence than the least satisfying ones. Not awkward silence, comfortable silence, the kind that means both people are actually somewhere together instead of just taking turns making noise. You don't have to fill every gap. Some gaps are where the real conversation lives. The fifth skill sounds almost too plain to work. Say, "I don't know," when you don't know. Say, "I haven't thought about that enough to have an opinion yet," when you haven't. Say, "That's more complicated than I can answer honestly in one sentence," when it is. Every one of those sentences does something that confident-sounding certainty never manages. It signals that when you do say something, you mean it, that your words have weight because you don't spend them carelessly. People trust the person who admits the limits of what they know far more than the person who has a smooth answer for everything. Smooth answers make people feel like they're being handled. Honest uncertainty makes them feel like they're talking to someone real. Here's the one that will probably hit somewhere uncomfortable. You're more interesting when you want nothing from the interaction. Not performing wanting nothing. Actually wanting nothing. Going into a conversation without a quiet agenda underneath it. To be liked, to seem smart, to leave a certain impression, to be remembered a certain way. That agenda has a texture. Researcher Robert Cialdini at Arizona State University documented how social desperation, even subtle social desperation, triggers a distancing response in others almost automatically. "But I want them to like me. I can't just not want that." You're right. You can't think your way out of wanting to be liked, but you can shift the question you're walking in with. Instead of, "Will they like me?" try, "What's actually interesting about this person?" The difference in your energy is immediate, and the other person feels it before you finished your first sentence. Curiosity about them lands completely differently than hope that they'll approve of you. One is a gift. The other is a request dressed up as a gift. People can tell which is which every time. The sixth skill is remembering one specific thing someone told you and bringing it back the next time you see them. Not their job, not their name, something small. The trip they were anxious about. The thing their kid said that made them laugh. The decision they hadn't made yet last time you spoke. You come back to it without making a production of it. How did that end up going? That's it. 4 words. Social psychologist William Swan at the University of Texas found that feeling known, specifically known, not just generally liked, is one of the strongest predictors of how attached people become to their social relationships. Not admired. Known. There's a specific warmth that comes from someone holding a small piece of your life carefully enough to bring it back to you. You've probably felt that warmth exactly once or twice in your life. You remember who gave it to you. So do they. The seventh skill is the one your nervous system is going to resist most. When something lands for you in a conversation, when someone says something that genuinely moves or surprises or delights you, let your face know before your brain approves it. You've spent years with a slight delay between feeling something and showing it. Partly protection. Partly the old habit of monitoring how much of yourself is safe to display. That delay is costing you more than you realize, because the moments when your real reaction breaks through unmanaged are the moments people talk about afterward. "They just lit up when I said that." You could tell it actually meant something to them. Unguarded reactions are the rarest currency in social life, and you have them. You've just been holding them behind a door that you crack open slightly instead of letting swing. The eighth skill sounds almost too plain to work. Use someone's name once, early, and then let it go. Just once. Woven into something you actually mean, not dropped into a sentence like a sales technique. Research in social cognition consistently shows that hearing your own name activates a distinct personal recognition response in the brain that other words don't trigger. It signals, "You are a specific person to me, not just whoever is standing here." Once is intimacy. Twice starts to feel like a technique. There's a line there, and you'll feel it when you cross it. Stay on the right side. The ninth skill is knowing when to leave while the conversation still has energy in it. Not when it runs out, before. While there's still something left to say, while the other person is still leaning in slightly, while the air between you is still warm. Most people stay until the natural end because leaving sooner feels rude. But the conversation that ends while it still had somewhere to go is the one they think about on the drive home. You become the person they wanted more time with, not the person they saw all of for one evening.
Ending well is its own form of attraction, and very few people know how to do it.
The 10th skill is the one that holds all the others together. You already know what it is. You've felt it on the rare occasions someone gave it to you, and you felt the absence of it in almost every other interaction you've had. Full presence. Not thinking about how you're coming across, not calculating the next move, not monitoring their face for approval signals while pretending to listen. Just being entirely in the room with one person for the duration of one exchange without any of the internal noise competing for your attention. Research on presence and social connection from psychologist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago found that the subjective experience of feeling truly seen by another person is one of the most powerful drivers of social bonding that exists. Not admired, seen. And it requires only one thing from the person doing the seeing, that they actually show up, entirely, to the moment they're in. You've probably given that to books, to music, to long drives at night when your brain finally stopped performing and just existed for a while. You know how to be fully present. You've just been directing it at safe things, things that can't look back. The person across the room is waiting for someone to show up like that. Most people never do. You could be the one who does. Which of these feels most out of reach for you right now? Drop it in the comments. Subscribing means you won't miss what's next. Why the people who seem to move through social situations without effort are usually running on a completely different internal script, and what that script actually contains.